Hello and welcome to my channel. Try This as a series where I talk about some interesting commanders for Magic the Gathering. Today we're going to be talking about Ghyrson Starn. If you enjoy this content, then please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It honestly helps other viewers discover the content I produce and is a great way to show support. With that said, let's dive in. Ghyrson is a 3/2 Tyranid human with Ward 2 that costs 1 blue-red. He has a triggered ability that reads, whenever another source you control deals exactly 1 damage to a permanent or player, he deals 2 damage to that permanent or player. Ghyrson is a surprisingly good value system that can squeeze out a ton of extra damage through various effects. I've always pictured this as a pinger commander, but he's also very effective as a token deck or just a list focused on 1/1 creatures. There's also plenty of instant and sorcery spells that just ping things for 1 damage, also making him an effective spell slinger or storm commander. There's so many ways to take the list that makes Ghyrson an interesting and flexible commander. Similar to Magar or Bess, he takes an interesting approach to a rather narrow build constraint. The general idea is to have as many instances of dealing exactly 1 damage as possible so Ghyrson can apply extra damage. For an added bonus, we can apply additional utility to Ghyrson such as lifelink or death touch. Honestly, I sort of struggled to narrow down where I wanted to take the example list. All 3 of these archetypes I mentioned I'm not that familiar with in these colors. My example list is sort of a hybrid from strategies all across these archetypes, so if you're building a list from that, then take that into account. Starting off is ping effects. Similar to Abaddon, we can just apply a ton of typical Rakdos ping effects to synergize with our commander. Mana Barbs and Burning Earth are some great passive effects. Though they hurt us as well, we'll likely be able to outburn our opponents with the extra damage Ghyrson dishes out. Burning Earth might not be that effective against monocolored decks, but even those lists tend to run several non-basic utility lands. Spear and Lobber Crew are some good examples of ping effects on creatures. With Ghyrson out, that's 3 damage to each opponent every time we activate these creatures. Many of these creatures also have untapped clauses in them like Lobber Crew. Goblin Sharpshooter and Thermo Alchemist are 2 examples. The Sharpshooter is normally just a consistent board wipe when it gets Death Touch. However, we can just give Ghyrson Death Touch to get the same effect while also synergizing with some other cards in the list. Ping effects normally serve as great utility cards for either Spellslinger or token archetypes in this list. For example, you could run Electrostatic Field and Kessig Flamebreather as some additional ping effects in your spellslinging list. Like them is Gel Electrode and Exalted Flamers of Tzeentch. If I had a bit more time to experiment with Ghyrson, I think this is the route I would probably take. Storm isn't really my strong suit, but it has a ton of ping effects overall. Storm also has access to several token production effects that also synergize with Ghyrson. Cards like Young Pyromancer and Memory Mystic will make tokens whenever you cast instant and sorcery spells. For more token production is Third Path Iconoclast and the Locust God. Third Path works with all the non-creature spells, and Locust God will make something for every draw. Spell-slinging decks and just Izzet decks in general are pretty good at drawing cards, so I'd expect this creature to just make a ton of flyers for you. Speaking of draws, real quick, both Niv-Mizzets would make great includes for this list. They can both be very threatening on their own if you build more around them, and they synergize very well with Ghyrson. If you go the spell-slinging route, then Perun would basically be an auto-include anyway. For draws, there's a few great effects that synergize very well with Ghyrson. Ophidian Eye and Curiosity are 2 auras that will draw us a ton of cards throughout the game. Our ping effects really enable these. Something like Lobber Crew can trigger Ghyrson dealing a total of 3 damage to each opponent while also drawing us 3 cards. That's incredibly efficient, making these some of the best cards for any Ghyrson list. There's a creature form in this effect in Tandem Lookout. Again, it's just a really powerful effect to have attached to Ghyrson. All are pretty cheap to cast too, making them some great effects to get out early in the game. While I'm covering these cards, I want to point out that all these draw effects each go infinite with either Niv-Mizzet I mentioned. They're all great cards individually for this list, but if you don't like including combos, I thought I'd just bring this up. Basically, once you draw a card or deal damage to a player, it starts a feedback loop where the draw triggers the dragon, then the dragon triggers the draw, and so on. You either win through damage at this point or by drawing out your deck for a Labman style win con. It's a great finishing effect that plays into the theme of the deck. But completely shifting gears and jumping back into tokens real quick, there's plenty of ping effects if you decide to go that route. Hellrider and Cavalcade of Calamity are 2 great utility cards for that archetype. Hellrider works with everything, while Calamity plays into our deck's building stipulation anyway. However, both of these need our tokens to attack to get any value, so some great cards to get value right away is Impact Tremors or Goblin Bombardment. Both are terrifying cards with some notoriously abusable effects. How far you really want to take these cards really depends on how much you lean into the token production. Goblin Bombardment is a really great effective card that can target anything at instant speed. As long as we have some creatures, we can essentially dish out 3 damage in response to whatever we want if our commander is out. There's one more ETB-like effect in Terror of the Peaks, which also would work with all the 1/1 creatures entering the battlefield. I think it's a little overkill, but if that's the route you're going to take, this is a great option. For some more token production effects, Loyal Apprentice and Real Bathysphere are awesome cards. There's a ton of ways to make 1/1s in these colors, and I can't cover them all, but these are some great options. Basically, any typical Goblin or Mirror production effect would work really well with Ghyrson. I've talked a lot about spell slinging effects, so let's cover some of the actual spells for those effects. I think Lava Dart and Geist Flame are some great spells for synergy. They both have flashback as well to possibly catch some opponents off guard with more burn damage. I like them as Gut Shot and Electrickery. The latter is a really cool spell we can overload for potentially a one-side board wipe. With our commander, that's 3 damage to all of our opponent's creatures, which would take out most utility creatures. Shower of Sparks and Smash the Dust are some more examples of cheap ping effects. Smash the Dust has some added flexibility that can either destroy a problem artifact or pick on the Arcades player. Like it are Blazing Volley and End the Festivities for some blanket ping effects. Again, with Death Touch, these are essentially just one-sided board wipes with Ghyrson. Though my example list doesn't really take advantage of Storm's capabilities, Grape Shot is actually a very effective card with Ghyrson. Each copy resolves individually, so those are all individual instances of 1 damage. It's very flexible to throw damage around wherever we need it. There are some keywords that would work really well with Ghyrson since he can do direct damage to our opponents. A mythical ability that only requires us to do less than half the needed commander damage, damage that any creature can apply, damage that doesn't need to be done in combat, and that we can proliferate would be pretty good, but we're not going to talk about that ability. Moving on, I've talked several times about Death Touch on Ghyrson, and 2 of the best cards to apply that are Basilisk Collar and Gorgon Flail. The collar gives the added bonus of lifelink, which is also an amazing keyword to give this commander. Not only will we likely destroy most things we damage, but we'll heal a ton throughout the game. I didn't cover every card in this deck or every suggestion I have for Ghyrson, so if you'd like to see the rest, check out the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel. Comment below on cards you think synergize well with this commander, and if you have any suggestions for commanders to build in the future. Thank you so much for watching, good luck, and have fun.